Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to answer a question that I got on Instagram that I thought was really interesting, and it's about protection. And should readers protect themselves while reading cards? Just practicing divination in general. And TLDR, my answer is yes, absolutely. But there is a little bit of nuance in there, because from my point of view, there are three types of protections or protection avenues you want to explore. And depending on the protection avenue we're talking about, the type of protection we're talking about, the answer is yes, definitely. I would clearly recommend it. And the last one would be, it depends on you. To be honest, only the first one I think is 100% mandatory. And you're going to understand why very quickly, because it does not only pertain to divination, it is for everything all the time. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to talk about the first type of protection, and it is emotional and psychological protection. And that, I think, everyone should do it, whatever you're doing, whether it is reading cards or just going to work. It is very important. What I'm going to talk about today is specifically, within the context of divination, but you can apply it to, a bunch of things. So number one, boundaries. Boundaries with others and boundaries with oneself. So setting healthy boundaries is extremely important. And I think that's like the number one thing to do before you do any activity, you do anything. Set healthy boundaries with yourself and with others. When it comes to reading, that can be, hey, I'm not comfortable reading for you on that issue because whatever reason. But that can also be, hey, I know myself, I am not going to read on that issue because that's off limits for me, and that could, trigger trauma or whatever. That's important. The second thing is knowing how/when to take a step back. Again, very important to protect your own mind and to protect your mental health. And that can be, it can look like different things. It can be just taking the time to get back to someone asking for a reading. If you're reading, like I read for friends and family, and sometimes I offer reading on Instagram. I take the necessary time to get back to someone and be like, hey, yes or no, depending on, if I can or cannot. I try, again, in the same kind of realm, I try to not do like hot readings. Like when something just happened, I just, chill. It can wait until tomorrow. There is no emergencies in divination. There are priorities. There are no emergencies. If you have an emergency, call 999. That's their job. Dealing with emergencies is not the job of a reader whatsoever. Another way to take a step back is through journaling and, writing down your readings and your interpretations and going back, having, just putting it away, coming back to it like a few days later, a few months later, revisiting. That is a good way to take a step back and, maybe change your perspective for something a little bit more objective. And finally, remember, free will is a thing. Divination and predictions especially do not cancel free will out. A prediction when it comes to divination is the same thing as a weather forecast. Sometimes you're expecting, rain and it's sunny and brilliant, and sometimes it's not. And also, you might be like, hey, I'm expecting rain in, like Newcastle. Sure. If you take a train and you go down to Cornwall, maybe you're going to have a lovely weather. Things change, and that's very important. And free will is the thing, and you can change things up. Something also that's very important to protect oneself is no. And you need to be able to say no. When you're not comfortable with something, nope. Nope out of situations and questions and readings. You're not comfortable with something? Nope. You do not want to read on a specific topic? Nope. You're not in a place where you can do a reading for yourself? Nope. if your cards are just like, you're like, hey, I would very much like to know if I'm like George has a thing for me, or do my relationship with whoever as a future. Sometimes we're not like lucid and clear-minded enough to understand that it's no. The cards are just saying no. Understand that it's important for you to be able to say no, and it's important for you to understand no coming either from the card, from the reader, from yourself. No is a very powerful word. Then we have take your time to figure out your question and speak it well. As in, your question is important. The way you phrase it is important, especially when you do like predictive readings. Let's say I want to know, am I gonna, stay with George until the end of my life? Am I gonna finish my life with George? The answer might be yes. Cool. The question is why? Why is it yes? What's the context? Because it can be yes, we're going to be happy ever after, happily married or whatever. It can also be like, yeah, you're going to stay in a toxic relationship. It can also mean like, yeah, you're going to die young and you're going to have technically finished your life with George. But also it could be like, no. But you might be like, yeah, but we're so good together. Yeah, if he dies in 2 years, you're not going to finish your life with him. You might have another relationship afterwards, And I know this is kind of gloomy, the way it's not like, it's an example that's easy to understand, even if it's kind of like dark. But yeah, you need to understand that your question needs to be, you need to make sure that you say what you mean, and that what you mean is what you really want to know. There is the same issue with significators within Lenormand. When am I going to get successful? I don't know. What is success for you? It's the same thing there. Formulate your question. And why formulating your question is very important to protect your mind is because it can have an impact on, like the answers you get through the cards can have an impact on your psyche, on your mental health. So it's very important to frame your question properly, basically. Then be aware of your limits, your own limits and bias, and the limits and bias of the person reading for you, if someone else is reading for you. If you're reading for yourself, know that you are definitely biased. We're all biased. For instance, I don't like brutal change. That's something that does not agree with me. Rather, my brain does not like. That's a thing. So I thoroughly dislike the Tower. However, I also know that even a very positive change, I will be, the way I'm going to go through it is going to be the same if it's devastating or if it's amazing. To me, it's a huge change. It's shaking everything up. It's crumbling, like my life is crumbling, even if it's for the best. So I know I am like negatively biased towards the Tower, even though it can be very positive. That's something you need to know. This is going to help you protect your mental health again, your emotional and psychological well-being. Again, know the limits of a reading. A reading is not an absolute truth. It has limits. It has limits in itself because it's like the most likely outcome of a situation or a question at a specific time. But it has also limits. It's limited by the fact that it is done by a reader that is a human being. So that person has limits as a human. And then take a break. Take a break. Stop. Just stop. Step back. Stop. If you need to take a break from your cards for a day, an hour, 15 years, do it. If it's good for you, take a step back. Take a break. Take a breather. Just stop. If you need to stop, stop. Those are the ways I would, set up or I would protect myself in an emotional and psychological way. It's basically protect your mental health, and it's not specific to divination. The second type of protection And we are talking about a what's the word again? It's funny because I I recorded this video in French and I lost the word. I was like, damn it. Oh, come on. Anyways, it's going to look that way. And the first type of protection, everybody should do it in any circumstances. The second one is also, it's a bit, maybe less people are going to be, it's going to apply to less people. And the last one might be relevant to very specific people. The second type of protection is energetic protection. So protect your energy. The first point I want to talk about could have been part of the first type of thing, like to protect your well-being and your mental health. And it is try to do your readings when you're well rested, because when you have the time in terms of quality and quantity. What I mean by that is doing a reading that is going to be like, if it's just like pulling a card of the day, nobody gives a crap. But if you're going to do like something that's quite important in terms of readings, and you're going to do it with, 4 hours of sleep over the past week and 25 and, surviving off of 25 cups of coffee, it is a bad idea. It's never a good idea. Time in terms of quality and quantity is very different. I make an effort to do my readings when I have time, both in terms of quantity. So if I need 20 minutes in terms of minutes, I need those 20 minutes. But I also need those 20 minutes to be quality minutes, meaning if I have 2 hours in front of me to do a reading, but, my upstairs neighbor is doing some renovation and it's like loud as hell, and I have like kids crying around me, or I'm super tired, I'm stressed out, I have other things on my mind, it's super cold, super hot. If I'm not comfortable, if the condition, the context is not good, is not positive, you are gonna have a few issues. I try personally to avoid reading in these circumstances. Now, when it comes to protecting your energy, you want to be able to anchor yourself, to ground yourself, to focus your energy. There are plenty of ways to do that. Just these are practices you want to look into. Then you want to be able to maybe use, like, you can rely on crystals for that, for a bit of help, and that's nice. You can also want to, so in French it's borner, the reading. So it's like setting a beginning and an end. So, having like putting your reading in a box, if that makes any sense, in terms of time and energy and space. So I tend to set up little rituals at the beginning and the end of my and during my reading, so that it exists within a space and a time that I have decided what the beginning is and what the end is. For me, that looks like lighting a candle usually, and always look like brewing a cup of herbal tea, whatever. It's important because I tend to associate the tea with the topic of the reading. So let's say I'm reading about finances, I probably gonna drink a bit of chai. But also I make sure that I start drinking my tea a little bit before, so that I can set up the mood, if that makes any sense. It's very ritualistic. And then I'm going to drink during the reading, and I'm going to make sure that by the end, I'm done with my cup. It marks the end. So it protects my energy, because I have put a ritual to get in, a ritual to get out, and it protects my energy, because the energy of the cards, of the reading, everything stays within that time frame, if that makes any sense. Now, another thing that I will do is, getting rid of unwanted energy, a surplus of unwanted energy. So that would be discharging the energy. You have plenty of ways to do that. It does not necessarily require purification. That's slightly different. Getting rid of unwanted energy and purifying oneself is slightly different. The unwanted energy, you can just, ground yourself, go touch grass and just discharge into the earth. You can also do that with a clear quartz, and you're going to want it squeaky clean and quote-unquote empty, you know what I mean? And then you're going to discharge, like focus your energy and discharge it into the quartz. So that's also a way to do it. So that's important because I can get rid of unwanted energy, and that protects myself and my own energy. Another thing that you might want to do is energetically clean your cards. If some people have a bit of a sticky energy. It looks like molasses, where it's trickle. It's very sticky, and it gets everywhere. And once you have finished a reading with them, whether they touch the cards or not, some of them you're going to need to clean your cards. You're going to need to get rid of the unwanted energy. There are ways to do that. That can be purification, but that can also be putting your deck in a corner and letting it just let the energies just evaporate in a way. I'm oversimplifying this on purpose, just because I don't want to get into too much, but just cleansing your cards and starting anew. If you know you're gonna have someone who has what I call treacle energy, the treacle energy or the sticky energy, you might want to decide if you're comfortable with them touching your cards or not. That is a question of preference. So if you're not comfortable with anyone touching your cards, you're not. Problem solved. If you usually ask people to shuffle the cards themselves or pull the cards themselves, you might want to not do that for specific people when you know their energies are going to get sticky and get everywhere. Think of a kid with a bunch of jam on their fingers. You do not want that child touching your things. Same thing here. It's just energy. And if for you it is important, or rather for your consultant, it's important to touch the cards. What you might want to do is have a neutral deck. So neutral decks can be two things. It can be either, we don't all have several decks, but for those of you who have several decks, some decks you keep for yourself and you do not share with anyone. This is your personal deck. Some decks you are specifically for other people. Those are the decks I'm talking about. The decks that you are not going to use for yourself. It's just for others. So it's kind of more of a neutral tool, neutral ground. It's fine. It's all right. It's not something that's going to bring in their energy into your practice, because you're not going to be using that deck for your practice. If you don't have that kind of deck, what you can do is get a double of a deck. If you work with that one deck, let's say this is the Belline. Let's say I want to work only with the Belline, and I want the person to be able to touch it. What I would do is have two copies, one for my consultant and one for myself. So when the person shuffle, and they're going to pull the cards, I'm going to just recreate the reading, the spread in front of me, so that I can touch the card, interact with the cards without, getting their energy on my deck. That makes any sense. That's a lot of logistics. That's up to you. I don't really do that. I have decks that I don't mind people touching, and I have people that I do mind touching any of my decks or any of my things for that matter. So that's a question of preference. The last type of protection that you want to set in place. So the number two, the second category, the whole thing is about keeping your own vital energy safe within you, not being drained by someone, not being tainted by someone, tainted by someone's energy, I mean. So it's kind of not pushing them away, but having energetical boundaries so that you're certain it does not get cross-contaminated, if that makes sense. Number three is spiritual, religious, or magical protection. And that is very specific to each individual, because it exists within that person's belief system and practices. Look at it in the way you would look at folk magic. Folk magic, if you're from one specific place or another, it's going to look completely different. It's the same thing there. spiritual or religious or magical protection, if you're a Catholic, is not going to look like the same. It's going to be completely different than someone who is let's say, a North Pagan, a North Pagan protection, like magical or spiritual or religious protection, is going to look completely different from someone who is into like the Greek pantheon and worships the Greek pantheon, if that makes sense. So it's going to look completely different. So it's very specific. And I can share the way I protect myself, some of the ways I protect myself, if you'd like, but it's not going to be necessarily like relevant to you because it's specific to my practices, my set of practices. So, yeah. So it's very specific. It can look like a bunch of things. It can be either supported by tools or entities. So that would be using amulets, talismans, maybe prayers, working with saints, lighting candles for specific, like, angels or gods or entities, whatever. So that, and in there you've got the specific, like, protective tools. So I don't know, like maybe you've got a tattoo of a rune or something, or a sigil, whatever. That's one thing. Then you've got the practices. So you're gonna have like the protection rituals before, during, after, whatever. That is also something that is very specific. And a protection ritual does not have to be like a protection ritual like in a witchcraft ritual. It can be a very religious ritual of, going to mass and maybe, communion and stuff like that can be that for you. And then you've got framing your practice within something that would be a bit like a circle. So working within a space that is dedicated to that specific practice. And that space containing the readings and the energies and everything. And then when you close it, everything is contained inside. It can be a whole room, whole place. It can be a moment. It can be, just like maybe, I don't know, reading within a circle, reading within, again, a specific room that is your reading room, or at a specific desk, and so on and so forth. And that goes hand in hand with specific protective practices that are going to be specific to your practice and your religion and your spirituality and your belief system. And then you've got a bunch of things that are going to be protection, but kind of like it does not protect you from the energy, it just gets rid of it so that it protects you afterwards. And that's going to be purification of your cards, of your space, of yourself. It can look like a bunch of things, depending on who you are and what you believe in. You might choose different instances, different methods, different, rituals and things like that. If you're a pagan, maybe like Catholic holy water is not going to do the trick for you, but it might, it depends on, again, your practices. And finally, the way you store your cards can also be a way to protect yourself. Depending on how you work, some boxes, well, it's not the case for this one, but you might want to put in a sigil to basically neutralize the energy within the cards when they're stored in there, so that when you use it afterwards, like the energies do not seep through and they're contained. You can also protect your cards and keep their energy safe from the outside. There's also a way to protect yourself because your cards are going to be an extension of you, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's basically a protection when you're a reader. It depends a lot on who you are, but as a rule of thumb, protect your mental health, protect your mind, protect your emotional well-being. That is extremely important, and that is not specific to occultism or esotericism or witchcraft or divination or whatever. Protect your mind, then protect your energy, and then protect yourself from maybe entities or stuff like that, because that's exactly what it does. Like the spiritual or magical or religious protection is going to protect you from specific things. The energetic protection is going to protect your energy, and then the emotional and psychological protection is going to keep you sane. And that's really important. So there you go. I hope this was interesting. I hope it was not too boring. If you want to talk about that specific topic, I would love to hear from you, because I think it is a topic that we should maybe talk a bit more about. Because when you think about protection whilst doing divination, you think about, I lit a candle for that archangel, or I'm burning this specific saint, that saint's incense, or I called upon that god or that entity or my guides or whatever. Yeah, that's part of it. We think about the last one, a little bit of the second one, but the first one was often overlooked for some reason. So if you want to talk about that, I would love to know what you do to protect yourself. And have a lovely end of your day, and I will talk to you in the next one.